Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Comma Coffee Club. I'm Valerie, and with my wonderful co-hosts, Lene and Michelle. And we're here today with our special guest, Mike Brignac of the Feeling Twisty Podcast and YouTube videos. So we're very, very happy to have Mike on.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. And Mike is almost at his 200th episode. He just had episode 194, so that's been climbing and actually beginning to have on some interesting interchange with his listeners, people who come in with stories. So it's not simply your own narrative, which you've been doing. It's wonderful. People like 2020 and our mentor 2020 and David Breslow, who was a guest on with us recently, they have spoken always very highly about Mike, and listening to his show, it is such a wonderful mix of personal experience, Neville teaching, Bible references in relation to Neville, and how that all comes back into your personal experience, your life, and actually what we'd love to know too about what brought you to Neville and the experience you had of, I think, being wheelchair bound with a serious brain injury for about 7 years, and then coming out of that and being really completely healed, as it were. So we'd love to hear about that from you and how this all brought you to where you are now.
Cool. I'm excited to be here. This is fun. You know, I've been seeing your posts and seeing you have different guests, and it's exciting to be one of those guests. And you mentioned 2020 and David Breslow. I love both of them. I met David through 2020's group, and we become really good friends. And that was one of the things I wanted after the healing, which we'll get to. I told Kim, my wife, back in late 2017, that I want somebody else to talk to. I want friends to talk to about this, who know me, who know all about Neville and who are exploring as well. And then over the last 3 years, it's just more and more, I've developed these great friendships with people. Mm-hmm. It's lovely.
Well, I think that's one of the beautiful parts of the community that 20 has built. And where he says, when you join Manifesting Master, you become friends, you get into like Dream Driven Day, or you go on and you become family. And we really do feel like we're definitely all connected in the global family through Facebook and through the internet, and it's been so fantastic getting to meet so many amazing people. It's how we started our group. We wouldn't have done that if we hadn't all come out of that. So we're very excited to have you. And so tell us a little more about your backstory, Mike, and how this all started to develop, and how you found your way to Neville and 20. That's something I think a lot of people like to know about.
Okay, cool. Well, I was born Tuesday, September 29th, 1970. Maybe not that far back. I'll jump ahead to August 2010. I was a reporter for television and radio, and in the market in our city, the market's pretty small. So just because you're on television and radio doesn't mean you're making any money. It's all based on your market size. So when the BP oil spill had happened earlier that year, I was covering it as a reporter, but by August, friends of mine were getting jobs over there, making big money working in the cleanup. And with 5 kids at home, I saw big money, fast money as a no-brainer. So I took off over there, and they made me foreman, which was crazy because I'd never done hard labor at all in my life. They made me foreman of a pressure washing team. So I was there for about a week, 10 days, I think, at this facility, or this big piece of concrete, flat land on Dauphin Island, or near Dauphin Island in Mobile, Alabama. And right across the canal from us was this facility. I'll say the name because you could look it up under OSHA's website. They have the whole story there. Millard Refrigeration. They sprang a leak and the anhydrous ammonia from that facility kind of drifted over to where we were. And I was in it for about 50 minutes, breathing it in.
Ooh, wow.
And over the course of a couple of years, finding doctors, trying to find the diagnosis, I found a brain surgeon that said I had lesions along the basal ganglia in my brain.
Wow.
And the basal ganglia is where, the problems with that portion of the brain is what causes Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. So with the lesions caused by the anhydrous ammonia, these physical things came out, this movement disorder called generalized dystonia. So I was a mess. It progressively got worse, as my doctor explained to me. As one muscle starts to my muscles would stay contracted and twist my entire right side of my body. It started with my arms and my feet, and then just became the whole right side. And after 7 years, it was coming to my left side too. So, imagine having a Charlie horse cramp in your muscle, but then multiply that, 10 times.
Oh
that was my usual day, and not just one spot. From the sole of my right foot up to the muscles in my face, constantly contracted, and other muscles popping, and like popcorn going off or fireworks all over my body. I lost control of anything you can voluntarily control, including those that you use to go to the bathroom. I would lose control of at the most inopportune times.
Oh man.
It wasn't fun. It was a mess for those 7 years. And I wasn't in a wheelchair at first. I'd used a cane for a while, and then I switched to a cane and then a wheelchair as needed. But eventually it became, strictly in a wheelchair for long distances. And around the house, I could hobble around with 2 crutches. So that was, by 2017, that's what what life was like. And real quick, that's where the name Feeling Twisty came from, but we can get to that later. So jump ahead to October of 2017. I had fallen out of my wheelchair. I was trying to go backwards out of my back door. I was being cute. And then the wheelchair the wheel stopped, and then I pivoted backwards and fell out and cracked my tailbone. So I was really
on top of everything else.
Right. It's like, oh, really? Come on.
Yeah, you were asking God.
Yeah. So I'm in bed primarily for a few weeks, not being able to move much because of the tailbone issue. I couldn't really sit in my wheelchair. So as I'm lying in bed, I remembered Dr. Joseph Murphy, reading his book back in college, and The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And I used that in college to move from academic probation to graduating with honors, cum laude, in 3 years from, so I knew it worked, but then I forgot about it I forgot all about the power of anything outside of me for about 25 years. And so I'm lying there in bed. I thought, I wonder if they have Joseph Murphy on YouTube. So I pulled up YouTube on my TV, and you know how YouTube does, it suggests other videos it thinks you might like. And
Sure.
Neville Goddard was the next one up. I'd never heard of him. And the title, the lecture was The Secret of the Sperm. And being a guy, I see sperm, I'm going to listen to it. Wait a second. What's he talking about? So I listened to it, and it blew my mind. Here he is talking about in a way that I could understand it,
So it was orgasmic.
Yes, it was. It's an explosion. He was using words that I got, he used a lot of biblical references. I grew up in church, so that worked for me. And then him just saying that it's your imagination. So it brought me in more easily, because usually anytime I'd come across a book or a teacher, and they're, it's always about, it's the awareness and consciousness and all these things, and they talk like this, and it just turns me off. It would just go, get away from me, all of these things. But then here's Neville talking about it's your own wonderful human imagination. That really fired me up, as Neville would say. So I started from Secret of the Sperm, listening to every video that YouTube suggested, and then finding downloaded. I just was buying. I went on a frenzy, buying all of his books, listening to all the lectures, and started practicing this art of imagination, as Neville says. And lying there in bed, one of the first things I did was put myself in other places in my house. Now, I didn't know what it felt like to walk normally, so I didn't imagine walking normally. At the time, I just couldn't. It was so foreign to me, so I couldn't even get that feeling.
Mike, excuse me. So you just mentioned you were lying in bed and imagining being in other places in your. Michelle and Lene and I, on our last episode of Living in the End, what were we talking about? But Neville's experience of lying on his bed when he wanted to appear in Barbados to his sister after his nephew died. The 17-year-old nephew had died of cancer, to show that we're not the body. And that's bilocating. So you actually, this is exactly the segue.
So actually, he was
talking about.
Yeah, Neville practiced that really often. So he was having people around for cocktails, and he would imagine that he was out in the hallway by the telephone, because it was a practice of movement in his imagination, so that he could put himself somewhere, which is exactly what you were practicing.
Right. Yeah. And that lecture, by the way, when he talks about his nephew, I like that he was honest enough to say that I couldn't heal him. You know, I didn't heal him, but I did prove that you can be in other places, you know, and he had hoped that his sister seeing him would like shed some light for her, but she just saw it as, I think you're going to die next, Neville. You know, that's what she wrote in that letter. I think you're next.
Embrace and impudence.
But that's what I love about Neville, his honesty. You know, he didn't make it sound like he always got everything. You know, he said, look, even in his latter years, I'm not perfect. I still have to watch my mental diet. I still have to watch my reactions. And I avoid anybody that comes on, you know, YouTube or has anything online that that refuses to admit that they make mistakes. They try to make it sound they're so perfect. And then I know it's easy. I just turn them off. I know that I don't need to worry about listening to them. So I practiced moving in imagination. I would put myself in the living room in my favorite chair, which I could get to with crutches, but I just sit in the chair and feel the feeling of the fabric under my arms on the armrest, and pick up the remote, the television remote, and feel the buttons with my thumb. And I would do that over and over, practicing. And then I would do little things, you know, we call them little things, but I would start to change my day, you know, and change my interaction with my family. And all of these little things, I had nowhere else to go. So I thought, well, I'm going to practice this. Because at the same time I was having, and I don't really talk about the mystical side of all of my experiences, but at the same time, I was having these fascinating waking dreams and sleeping dreams. I was seeing things I never thought were possible. I'll give you one quick one, because this was what fired me up. Around the same time, I found myself outside of my grandparents' house. You're not from Louisiana, so you wouldn't know, up in the country, in the central part of our state. And I walked in their front door and into the room I grew up in, and walked into the kitchen, and here are all these people. The kitchen was full of people, young people in their 20s, and maybe some in their 30s, but I recognized them. They were my dead aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles, and my great grandparents. And they were all in there, and they were all having coffee, and they all stopped and looked at me when I walked up. And my great grandfather, who I hadn't seen since I was 5 years old, but he looked much younger. He said, Michael, he called me, what are you doing here? And I said, what am I doing here? What are you doing here? This can't be, you shouldn't be here. And I looked at all of them. My grandfather, who had passed, well, all of them had passed already. And they laughed at me. They all laughed. And they said, you don't understand yet. And they went back to drinking coffee. So I walked back out the door, and as I'm walking out, my uncle, my wife's brother, drove up in his big old Cadillac that he had. And he steps out and he looks like he does now. He's much older. He's in his 70s. And he gets out of the car. And I said, Uncle Frank, what are you doing here? I was thinking, if I'm not supposed to be here, I know he's not supposed to be here. And he just kind of chuckled at me. He's like, hello, Michael. And he went on in the door. And then I woke up. Well, a few months later, he passed. My uncle passed. But I didn't know that at the time. But it was these vivid dreams and other experiences that I was having that I knew there's more to all of this. I knew what Neville was talking about was true. So I've had many failures in my life, but being stubborn is something that I succeeded at when I wanted something, so I just put my all into it and studying what Neville was saying and practicing. And about a month or about 3 weeks later, I was talking with my daughter and my wife, and we were talking about how we wanted to travel. My niece and her husband were about to go to Puerto Rico to help unofficially, just as friends of people in Puerto Rico, to help them in the aftermath of, was it Hurricane Irma? I can't remember the name of the hurricane. And we were talking about how we wanted to go do things like that. We wanted to live in the mountains. Everything we talked about involved traversing land that was not friendly to wheelchairs. And so the conversation ended like that. I said, Bella, none of these places are handicap friendly. It was kind of a downer. And then fast forward to Thanksgiving Day, 2017, about a week or so later, I'm lying in bed and we're going to be heading to my parents' house for Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm, as Neville says, just in the silence, not really thinking about anything, just being calm, just being still. And the conversation came up in my memory, and this little conversation. And now, when I first started telling people, after this healing, I was invited to churches, and so I kept it. I spoke in a way that they would understand. I didn't want to freak them out. I was very timid as far as not wanting to offend anybody in the beginning. Yeah. Now I know too much, or I've experienced too much to to bother with worrying about offending people. But the conversation, what I said was God talking to me, and it is, but it was me. The conversation went like this: how are you going to do any of that in a wheelchair? And I said, you're right. And then I said, I guess it's time for Dystonia to go. And I said, okay. Huh. And I opened my eyes, and I still had to scooch to the side of the bed and get in my wheelchair and wheel to the garage and get the crutches and get into the car. I was still incontinent, still twitchy and twisty, and nothing had changed. Not one thing had changed. A few days later, now I've told the story before, and I'd forgotten about this part of the story until my daughter reminded me. That was a Thursday. The following Monday, I'm in the kitchen, and I'd grabbed a slip of paper to write grocery items down, a grocery list. And over those 7 years, I lost the use of my right hand, so I had to relearn. I was born ambidextrous. I could do both, but I hadn't used my left hand in years. So my writing was not very good. So I'm writing the grocery list, and my daughter walks up and she says, Dad, you're writing with your good hand, or with your right hand. And I looked down, I was writing smoothly. It was beautiful handwriting. It was beautiful with my right hand. And I said, oh, you're right. And then I remembered my little conversation from Thursday, and I let it go. I didn't really think about it. I just thought that was cool. I was still in the wheelchair. 2 more days pass, still there. I even had an experience on Tuesday. I'd gone to an airport with my wife, dropping off our son at the airport. And had such a bad experience there because every restroom in the airport was out of service. Every handicap restroom was out of service. And the only restroom open, I couldn't fit the wheelchair through the door to get in. Oh, and I was so mad. Oh, no. I pointed that out because people sometimes wonder, like, oh, I got angry. Did I mess up my manifestation? No, you didn't. I didn't. I didn't even think about messing up my manifestation. I was just pissed off because I couldn't, take a piss. I was very angry. next day, Wednesday night, we'd gone to church and come back from church, and I was sitting in my favorite chair. And usually when I get up, I have to grab the crutches right there at the chair and get up and go to the wheelchair. And I stood up, and I didn't even reach for my crutches. And I just stood up and I walked right past the crutches and into the kitchen. And my wife calls me back. She goes, "Come back." And I walked back, and I knew then what was happening. And she said, "Now walk to the door, front door." So I walked the other direction to the front door, and I walked back. And she said, "You're walking normal." And I laughed. I said, "Yeah, let me tell you about this conversation I had last week."
Oh.
And it was it. There was no, thunderbolts and lightning, no earthquake, no voice from heaven, angels singing. There was no indication that it was happening. I mean, and a few minutes before, I was still cramped and twitchy and everything. And then I stood up and it was completely gone. And I haven't had one symptom since then. That's been 3.5 years now.
Wow. Wow.
What did your doctors say about that, Mike?
That's a good question. I never went back. I didn't, for one, I'd been out of work for so long, I didn't have health insurance anymore.
Right.
So I couldn't afford to go to the doctor. And I hadn't seen the doctor since January of that year, because the medication was awful. It was, L-Dopa. It's a levodopa for the dopamine uptake, and a bunch of other medicines that made me feel like crap. I mean, if you could imagine feeling worse, I mean, on top of everything else with my symptoms, the medicine just made it harder to want to live. It just made me feel miserable. So I'd stopped taking the medicine in the January of 2017. And I saw no reason to go back. Why pay somebody to tell me what I already know? Right. I didn't need proof. And I'd already understood at that point, I don't need anything. I was keeping the Sabbath, so to speak, even though I'd already manifested the healing. I didn't need the doctor to say, "No, there's still lesions there." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What am I trying to prove? Because I know I'm healed. Go to the doctor is just to prove it to somebody else. And I really don't give a shit what anybody else thinks.
It's all
as far
in
as
you
proving
anyway.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So me going to the doctor trying to prove something implies I doubt it. I'm doubting it if I think I need to go get verification. So I never went, I haven't been to a doctor since. So, and that's, it's funny. I just don't, I'm not like I haven't had some illnesses. I've gotten sick over the past three years, had a couple of colds, but I know what to do now. I don't blame the anhydrous ammonia or the pollen or a virus. It's always within me, and it always has been within me. So I know what to do. I know I got myself into that sickly state or to that ill state, and I know what to do to get right out of it. So a doctor is just going to reflect my own, what's going on within me. So
I find this so, I love this topic.
So do I.
I work in healthcare. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm not really healthcare, more on the science side, but still, like, COVID is my baby, like, work-wise. And so I find it hard sometimes when I'm working, because I hear everybody, COVID. It's what every conference calls about at work. We work cases. I'm looking at all the numbers. I'm seeing the statistics. But knowing what I know, like, each person, where were you thinking this? Like, what are you fearing this? And then you're just going to the doctor and confirming this and all of that. And just yesterday, I wasn't working a COVID case. I was working a different respiratory disease, but I was in the guy's record, and his underlying medical conditions was this long, boom, 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 this. And he was constantly at the doctor's, "What's wrong with me?" You're diagnosing him with something. Put him on this medication, causes a side effect. Now you got this diagnosis, this. Well, no wonder you developed a virus that then turned into double pneumonia and respiratory distress, and it took you out. Like, it's just like how that plays out. And like, I obviously can't go to work saying that.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear that. And of course, when I'm like working with people, I'm not being like that, but I have this understanding of like, you know, you can get through this. There's another way. It doesn't have to be this way, you know?
You must do a lot of imagining for others.
Who? Me?
You in your job.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Imagine lovingly for others.
Woo. It's I have not mastered that clearly because like
Well, nobody's a master.
Imagining lovingly division of
Yeah.
your job. But yeah.
I'm more at a point of observing it where it's the spiral principle that Neville talks about. You know, I'm there, I'm observing the numbers increasing. I'm observing, you know, us going out and vaccinating people. I'm observing all of this, but I know the truth, and I know the truth of me. And so it's more so just kind of going along with the flow and just, you know, it is what it is. We will be in another pandemic, you know, 10 years from now. That's just how these things work. And so.
Yeah. Well, the spirit of fear, you know, the Bible talks about don't have a spirit of fear.
Exactly.
But as long as we're here in this human experience, there will be things to be fearful of if you choose to. You know, that this drama is, the characters may change or the names may change, but it's always going to be things. There's going to be tyrants. There's going to be pandemics. There's going to be all of these things. That's part of the human experience. It's part of the story. It's kind of like, you know, we get, you know, movies, you know, it's like always the same. It's the same formula, just different actors are playing it, different names, you know. It's the same thing with life. It's the same formula. It's just we change within it, but there's always going, you know, when people talk about, you know, trying to fix the world where we're all going to live in peace. But that would, once we're all fully aware of who we are.
Yes.
Sure.
That can happen.
But then we wouldn't, there's no point in having this earth, this, you know, I know we would, at that point we'd do something else, you know, we'll come up with another experience, another game to play. So they want to have this perfect world, but that's not the human experience. That's, you can't, the perfection is not in this human experience. So you can't have that perfection. You can be aware of it and know who you are, but as long as we're still playing this game, there's going to be those things that are happening. But each one of us will go through it and then have that spiral motion in awakening. And then you see the pandemic, you see the terror and the fear, but you know now you're not in it. You're in the world, but you're not of the world. You observe it, like the Bible says, be in the world, but not of it. I never understood that, but now I do.
Yeah.
Aware of it, but know that's not you. You know, I see that, but I'm not that anymore. And it's freeing. It's so much freedom in realizing that because you don't have to change your life because of what economists say or health officials say. You know now that this is a drama. And your states are just characters participating in this drama.
Yes.
So your experience obviously influenced you to start your podcast.
Yes. Okay, so Feeling Twisty. I had that name back when I was still sick. I did start a blog called Feeling Twisty. I think it might still be out there on WordPress somewhere. And it's going to be all about, you know, raising awareness. You know, that's what you do. You get sick with something, then you start a nonprofit to raise awareness. Everybody does that. So I was going to raise awareness of this awful movement disorder, dystonia, which, by the way, I didn't realize about 40% of Parkinson's sufferers also have dystonia.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't realize that.
What's the statistics on somebody healing from it, Mike?
I don't know. I know there's one person. I don't know. I know people that have had deep brain stimulation, putting the things down in the brain that have gotten rid of it. Now, I do know. No, I take that back. I know two now. A man I used to go to church with had really severe dystonia. I can't remember which form it was, but it affected his neck. His head was twisted like this all the time, and it affected his larynx. It affected his voice, and he was always going to get Botox injections, which would help a little bit. But the last I heard, he's completely healed. So now there are 2 of us that I know of with Dystonia that were healed.
Yeah. There is a documentary that was done a number of years ago called Twisted. You
That's
probably
right.
know about it.
Laurel.
And you know who,
yeah.
who talks about the young woman who, when she was 17, she was in an accident. Right. So the documentary you've seen.
I haven't watched it yet. I promised Laurel I would watch it, but I have not. It's on my watch list on my Prime account.
Yeah.
So don't spoil it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to spoil it for the audience. If they want, they can find it and they can watch it. But that's all I will say about it. But that explains. And I think looking back, I've probably known people who've had it. I wasn't aware what it was called. But my late husband, who passed away, who transitioned, I guess more appropriate to say, in 2013, had Parkinson's. So things that I might not have known were called that dystonia part of it. But I could see how they could have been.
Right. And the doctor probably wouldn't even explain it to you that there's a difference. They put it all together as the one movement disorder. So that's where Feeling Twisty came from. I had that blog, and it was just, what a downer. It's always just about how miserable life was. Looking back on it, I found it. I looked it up one day a year or so ago, and it was on there, and I was reading the things I'd posted. I was like, geez, the crap I was giving life to.
Yeah.
And no wonder nobody paid attention to my blog. It was so miserable. It was a waste of internet space. So that Feeling Twisty was there. I had bought, the website, the .com, and now the .co and the .net of Feeling Twisty, which is finally coming. Someone's actually building my website. But so I'd just been there. I hadn't really done anything with it until I was a guest on a friend of mine's podcast in 2019. And we'd got to talk about how I told him I thought about doing a podcast, and he encouraged me to do it. And then he said, you already have the name. Feeling Twisty is a perfect name for your podcast. And I thought, it's a whole new meaning now. So, where do you want me to go? You want me to tell you about how those next couple of months after the healing and then jump to the podcast?
Sure.
Yeah, whatever. However it goes.
I was, like I said earlier, I was talking to Kim about how I just want somebody else to talk to about this. I want more conversation. I love conversations with people. Every day I'll look forward to who I'm going to talk to. Not a day goes by that I don't talk about this, not the healing, but the power of imagination. It always comes up. So January, February of 2018, I just decided, well, let me look on Facebook and on just online. And I came across, not that, Neville Goddard was a strange enough name, but here's this other one that's like, he calls himself 2020. Jeez, what the hell? So I looked into it, and man, he had some great stuff. And over the course of a few months, I started just, paying attention to what his videos that he was doing and getting to know him through that. And then doing some live calls back, I guess in summer and fall of 2018, back when he had open calls, and really explored some wonderful things on those live calls. And about the same time that fall, my son, at the time he was 19, I have 4 sons. He was involved in an awful motorcycle accident, a hit and run. And he had nearly lost his hand, tore up his whole body. I've talked about it on my podcast about the healing. And having the live calls, I was on a live call with 20 and Victoria and the Maxwells were on there, and people from all over the world. And I told them, because they knew me by then, because I'd been on several calls, and I said, hey, I'm here at the hospital. Whew. That was a powerful live call. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. It was just that moment I'll never forget, the love that I experienced from Victoria, 2020, from Yasmin. She's wonderful. It was just a wonderful experience sitting there outside the hospital talking to them on this live call. And after that, my son, by the way, and if anybody is curious, you can find it on my podcast, the episodes. He was supposed to be in the hospital for months, and in the trauma center for months, and then a rehab hospital for months after that. 2 weeks after he got in the hospital, he was out of the hospital, back at home. So it was an amazing experience, that. And so that's when I really realized, okay, I need to do something to share my story. And preceding all of that, earlier in 2018, I naturally thought, I'm healed. I'm experiencing these things. Of course, I need to write a book, right? Because everybody writes a book. That's what I thought you have to do. The little kid that went to heaven and came back, he got a book and even a movie. So I thought, well, people would like to read this. Well, I went around and around with that, wanting it, thinking of it, and never really doing it, because I had all these things I was thinking of that I'm not good enough. I can't, I can write news copy. I used to be a reporter. I can write a news story, but write a book, I would immediately start thinking of people critiquing my grammar and all of these reasons why I shouldn't write the book. So it laid stagnant for a year. And it's toward the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. It was a live call with 2020. And I had no warning. I got on the call. Hey guys, I'm here. And 20 said, all right, Mike, take it. What are you talking about? And he tossed the mic to me, so to speak. He gave me the lead.
Passed you the stick.
Yes. And so here I am without warning, hosting this live call. And I wrote a big note on my notebook and showed it to Kim. I'm hosting the call right now. And we got off the live call, which was so fascinating. At that moment, I knew something had changed within me. I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Why have I been avoiding getting back on the microphone? While I was sick, I didn't talk. No public appearances, no anything on a camera. There are very few pictures of me while I was sick, because I refused to have pictures done when I could avoid it. And certainly not on the microphone, because I could hardly talk. I'd lost the one thing I was good at, talking. As a reporter, I had no problem getting on stage and hosting events and being on live microphones in public until I was sick. And then it all came back to me. Sure, I might write a book one day, but why not just dive into what I already can do?
What you know.
And I love it. So then things started changing. In fact, if anybody wants to hear that whole story, it's on the episode Twisty Days. It's back from a couple of months ago. Twisty Days, well, I did it in October, November of last year. You can find it. It's a great story because I talk a lot about 2020. Sure. But that's when I started really exploring, what state do I want to experience? And that's when it came to me. Storyteller, podcaster, and just it felt good. That I haven't golfed much in life because I'm awful at it, but I golfed badly enough to know that when you hit the sweet spot, when you hit that ball in the sweet spot, it's like, oh, that's going somewhere. And I did it maybe twice in the little bit of time I tried to golf, but I know what a sweet spot feels like now. And that was my sweet spot. I knew it. I felt it. I knew it was going to happen. And over a course of a few months, I got invited to go back onto a reunion show on a local radio station. They were bringing back the whole day. This one day, they were going to have hosts from, I am now at that point retro. I'm coming back on a retro day. I'm like, oh, I'm that old now. So I got back that morning. I was on the show with two of my old co-hosts, Gary and Heather. So we did the show that morning. And a man listening to that, a guy I had known through radio over the years, but didn't really know him that well, Tom is his name. He heard me and thought, oh, Mike would be a good guest on our mutual friend, Orrin Parker's podcast, Find the Good News. Now, Tom didn't know anything about the healing. He just heard me and thought Mike would be good on Orrin's podcast. So he called Orrin, and then a week or so later, Orrin, I hadn't talked to him in a decade, messaged me and said, hey, I'd like you to be a guest. And I went a few weeks later, I recorded his show, and that's where we talked about, hey, you could use Feeling Twisty as your podcast title. And he was the perfect person for me to talk to because he gave me all the information I needed on his recommendations on which service to use, what equipment to use, everything that I would need, he gave to me in one lump.
Your bridge.
Email. Yes, it was a lovely bridge from that live call with 2020 through the invite to be on the retro show, Tom hearing me, thinking of me to have me on Orrin's show, and then Orrin giving me everything I need. And before my episode even came out on Orrin's show, Feeling Twisty was already on the air. I had Feeling Twisty podcast already going, and into July in 2018. 2019.
Fantastic. Yeah. Wow. I just want to ask you a question referring back, Mike, to when your son was hospitalized and, it looked like it was going to be this endless stream of therapy and things. So it was a combination. Did he use Neville's techniques also, or was it more of you lovingly imagining for him? How did that, come about that he was able to come out of the hospital sooner than anticipated?
Okay, that's a great question. That night, let me just take you back to that night, September 9th, 2018. My wife and I, Kim, we were lying in bed, just turned the TV off. It was about midnight, and her phone goes off. And as parents, you never want the phone to go off, at that late at night. You immediately, I've worked on.
You immediately assume worse, don't you?
Right. So I've learned now, I don't jump to the fear immediately, but I immediately start imagining lovingly before as soon as I see who's calling me. When it's my child in the middle of the night, I'm already imagining it's okay. But that night, Kim gets the call, and so it's from somebody else, not my son, which really worried us. So we hop into our vehicle and it's about a mile away from us, from our house. And we're driving down the street. And she says, Mike, you do what you do. Do the thing you do. I can't right now. I'm driving. I'm too upset. So I'm imagining for Caleb as we're driving down the street. And now I imagine seeing him standing up next to the ambulance. That didn't happen. But we get there and he's still lying on the street, twisted up with his motorcycle. And his one arm is curved like a J. It has too many bends in it. And his pants are soaked with blood. Somebody, he had turned in front of him and he was going at a good clip down the road, and he nearly went all the way through the car, but he hit the window, and then that's what ripped his hand completely off. And then he fell over the car, and that guy just kept going. He took off. So my son's lying in the street in the dark. These two high school girls drive up who are going to be doctors. They're already taking pre-med classes, those college courses while you can in high school. So she already has medical training. So she hops out and starts providing treatment to them, first responder type stuff. And they're the ones who call us. And so the ambulance just gets there when we're there, and we rush to the hospital. And I'm just, before that, I'm standing there and the lights are flashing. He's crying. My son's saying, he's delirious. He's saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I felt this peace. I was, amid all this chaos, I knew I was in the silence right there. I was completely at peace, and I knew he was going to be fine. So we ended up going to another city because our city didn't have a trauma center, that level of a trauma center, because he had bleeding on the brain, a cracked sternum. His arm was ripped up. His penis was nearly, his male organs, they didn't think they were going to be able to save any of it. And so I'm thinking, this is other than death, this is the worst thing for a 19-year-old to hear. You don't want to have a bag to pee in the rest of your life hooked up to you. So in the emergency room there, the doctors and the nurse are telling us all these things, how bad it is. And I scrunched down on the floor and I just closed my eyes, and I heard the doctor's voice and the nurse's voice telling me what I wanted to hear, that he's going to be fine, that where they were saying this is damaged, I heard them say that we thought it was, but everything looks good. And I kept hearing that. And we go to the trauma center in Lafayette, Louisiana. And I just imagined hearing, after we met the surgeon, the surgical team over there, because he immediately had to get in. He had two or three surgeries, 2 or 3 surgeons working at the same time on different parts of his body, just to get him pieced back together to have more surgeries the next day and the following day. So having met the surgical team, I knew what they looked like and what they sounded like. And I just imagined having them come in the next morning saying, we're shocked at how we're surprised at how well he's doing, how well Caleb is doing. I heard him say it, and I knew that's what I was going to hear. The next morning, they come in so early. The doctors come in at like 5 o'clock in the morning, turn the lights on, and I'm half asleep, and I'm hearing the surgeon tell us, he didn't say we're surprised at how well he's doing. He said, we're shocked at how well he's doing. So
yes.
Another cool thing about that, his arm had lost a huge chunk of muscle. They were going to have to graft a lot from other parts of his body just to get it workable. So they took him into the plastic surgeon brought him in just for a cleanup, to clean out the area and prep it for the graft surgery the next day. Well, a few hours go by and we're waiting for the surgeon to come out. He finally does. And he says, well, the muscle is all there. So I just reconnected it. So we don't need to do the other surgery. I was like, wait a second. Yesterday, there wasn't muscle. He's like, yeah, we just didn't see it. I guess it's there.
It was hiding. Yeah.
Yeah, right. All that tissue.
Of course it was.
Overnight growth.
Moved out of the way.
Yeah, because he had a hole there. I didn't see the photo. My wife saw what it looked like, a photo of what it looked like before the surgery. There was no muscle tissue there. And so all he needed was just the little skin graft to cover that area. He didn't need all the other muscle tissue to be grafted on. And instead of the months in trauma and the months later in rehab, he was, by 2 weeks later, September 24th, he was home. He was home with us in Lake Charles.
Wow.
And how is he now? How's he doing?
He's great. He's got a scar, on his arm, but I mean, he's got a great job. He's in love. All his parts work, which is very important for anybody. But at that age, it's really, it's really, really important. So he's really thriving. And that's through the months after he got home from the hospital. He went through a type of depression because he thought he was, he was ugly because of his scars. I just saw him thriving. And I talk about this in a couple of episodes. I just would bring his face up whenever I thought about him, or when I would hear somebody telling me about how depressed he was, I would just see his smiling face. And that's all I did. I didn't try to imagine the opposite of that, or them telling me, what's the easiest thing I can do that implies he is thriving? Seeing his smiling face.
Yep.
And he's thriving now. He's a great guy. He's 21 years old, just about to be 22. And all my kids are fascinating. Each one of them is thriving in their own way. I mean, when I realized then how easily I can imagine for my kids, I just imagine them all thriving. And I do the same with each one of them. I see their smiling face and I feel the thrill as a parent, knowing that they're thriving. And each one of them, they're kicking ass, all of them. They're just... It's just, they don't need me. I'm done. I can.
That's so amazing, because I think a lot of people, we don't know how this one's going to turn out. This one doesn't know what they want to do. We take them for counseling, or this one was in trouble, or whatever it is. And look how you can do this, the gift that you can give your kids, and maybe even impart to them that how they will be able to, to give that legacy to them, to pass that on as they develop and have families of their own, that they can continue to do that. So we're always running around outside of ourselves, taking the kid to this therapist, you may sometimes need to get it. And if something's really weird, you may need to get some kind of framework, but in the main, I was just reading about something on Quora, something little child, 3 years old. What if the parent had just imagined lovingly for that child that the things that they heard or saw, were that the child was fine and happy. And this is the thing. We think it's the process of a faith healer, or that you have to run to all the specialists. But we have this, and we don't even, most people just don't even know that they're in touch. They can be in touch with that. So this is so inspiring for people to know.
Thank you, Mike.
You mentioned legacy. That son, the one that was healed, he's practicing the art of imagining.
Beautiful.
He in fact, I talk about him in a couple of episodes, where he used his imagination for someone else to get the money she needed. And within 5 minutes of him imagining that she had the money she needed, she had the money, so he understands the power of imagination. Now, and my youngest child, my daughter, I have 4 boys and a girl. She's 16, and she'll periodically share stories with me or with her mom about what she did in imagination. So I love that she's already playing with that. And I don't push it on my kids because they all know now. They'll start telling me something about some problem. And my 20-year-old son, Caius is his name. He'll start to tell me a problem, and I'll like, well, I know, Dad. Just imagine it.
Yeah.
I know what to do.
I do that to my children.
It's so great to see. And that, you're right. That right there makes up for all the things you end up regretting as a parent. I didn't understand it hearing older people when I was younger. Oh, I regret not spending more time with my kids, or all these mistakes they made in how they raised their kid. And I went through that for a time, regretting the way things I did or the choices I made or didn't make in raising my kids, giving them better experiences. As a parent, you can't help but have regrets. When you're thinking that you're small and separate, when you realize who you are, you can revise the past, but you don't have to go back through and revise everything. Be that parent now, be that parent that you want to be, and share the gift of the power of imagination with your kids. That's better than any $1 million inheritance that I could leave them. If they watch this, I don't want them getting any ideas. There's no $1 million inheritance. But for them to understand the power that they are, that is the key to everything. They can have anything and they want in life. And my 20-year-old is making more money than I did my first few years out of college, my first several years out of college. He doesn't have a college degree, and he's making more money doing what he's doing, and he loves it. So, what I taught my kids is, don't ever accept tradition as a rule you have to follow. Don't even take rules as a rule you have to follow. Make your own way, break the mold, and do what you want to do. And like Bono said on the Grammys back in 1992, F up the mainstream. He told the people in the audience.
Remember that?
Yeah. So that's what I want my kids to be, that bold, to just do what they really want to do. And I tell anybody that ever chats with me about it, because some people will message me that listen to the podcast. I'm not a coach. I don't, but I happily talk to people and chat with them. And I tell them that, get away from all these things you're thinking about, because they're talking about what their family expects, what the economy's like, and what their degree is in, like what their score was on their past test. Stop it. What do you want to experience? Forget all of that. What is it you want to experience now? Don't make it about, I just talked to a woman that is so worried about changing her medical, it's a test to getting to medical school or something. I wasn't real clear on it, but it was a test that she failed. And so for 10 years, she's been trying to change the test score. And she's turned around like this, and looking backward at this test score and making it all about that. And she wanted me to help her revise the test score. And I tried to explain to her, you're way too focused on this test score. And so I tried to get her to see, what would you be doing now if you had the life you're living? And she said she wanted this type of doctor. But I need that test score fixed. I'm like, that. Let's stop talking about the test score. Let's get ahead way beyond all that, because she wanted to end up being a doctor in the United States. And so I told her, forget all of these things about the test score. Put yourself in a bed in the U.S. tonight and feel your home country thousands of miles away, like Neville talks about and 20 talks about, and feel the satisfaction of being that doctor now. And I haven't heard back from her, but I'm constantly finding things that I can let go of. We think we're dropping all barriers or all these limits, these traditions, and then something will happen. I think, oh, isn't that silly that I was still holding on to that thing, that it has to be that. And by noticing
all the
that,
time.
yeah, and just by noticing it though, it breaks free. I break free of that.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, I have become the awareness that I am. I'm no longer in it. You can't see shit when you're in it. You don't know what's going on. You're just dealing with shit, all these problems. And then you it's like sticking your head up. I'm like, oh, wait a second. That's down there. I'm not that, because I wouldn't be aware of it, of this point of view if I were. And there's so much freedom in that realization, in that moment.
I don't know if you read David's book, Beyond the Words.
I did. He let me proofread it. I got to read it before anybody else.
Yeah, so that's what he talks about, is in those moments, ask yourself, am I awake or am I asleep?
Right.
Just by noticing, oh shit, I was asleep, but now I'm awake to situation.
Right.
I'll ask myself, am I this problem? Am I this problem, or am I this pain or this feeling, or am I aware of it? And I first read that I can't remember the book. It's one of the teachers I've read over the years that I first heard that questioning. And I do it all the time now. Am I really this? Or am I just aware of it? Or am I imagining it? I'm imagining I'm sick. I'm imagining I have money problems. And it does. When you turn toward awareness, you turn toward your true self responds. It can't help it. It's an automatic response. It's going to respond to you, your true self. But people want to make it hard. They want to make it, they think, people love systems and programs, and they feel this crazy screwed up need, and I'm one of them, to throw money at different programs and systems. Oh, I have to buy that. I have to spend thousands of dollars. I need a new regimen to follow every day.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do all that. It doesn't have to be a struggle. It can be as simple as, am I really this problem, or am I imagining it? Am I the being that is aware of this? And at first, it didn't feel like it. At first, when I first started asking myself, my answer was, hell yes, I am this, I'm feeling it. Yes, Mike, what are you talking about? But the more I turned toward myself, toward awareness, I started noticing more and more of that. And that, and that led to, within all of this, the promise was happening, experiencing the promise. And that really that's when you get to when you really, 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 really know, and there is no longer doubt on who you are, it changes everything. It changes, you love everything. You can't help but love everybody that you come across, even the assholes, you
love them for that.
Right. I recognize the state. I see them, the state, and I see the being they really are, and I can't help but love them. It just, and those moments when I, get caught up in a little reaction, and I notice it now, the feeling, I feel like crap immediately. My body feels it. It shows me that, I can, the whole thing, I feel it. And that's, something's flying in front of me. That's my true being flying around. It's my spirit animal. It's a gnat. But you can't help but to be the love that you are. It's a wonderful experience.
Thank you so much, Mike. We've gone about an hour.
Oh, you serious? Oh, wow. That was fast.
But wow, I mean, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
And we'd love to have you back. Please come back.
Let's do it. We need to do it. And then I can put it on my channel too, so it can be double shared. That would be really cool. But let's do this. Awesome. Well, I've said it already. This is what I do. I talk about it. If I'm not talking to people in person, I'm posting something on Feeling Twisty on Facebook or Instagram.
We can share the recording with you if you would.
Do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I just have to send it to Google Drive.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's
that was
fantastic.
Easy. Yeah.
Yeah. You have such a great voice too. It's galvanizing to listen to you. It's just, your cadence when you, especially tell me when you're telling stories, and also when you're recording your podcast. And then I started seeing you on YouTube where you're where you're, it's the visual as well. And it's, did you have training in speaking, public speaking or acting or voice?
I took, no voice lessons. I just, most of my high school, as far back as I remember, people would tell me, "Oh, you have a voice for radio. You could be on the radio."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I didn't really dive into that until years later, in the late 90s, when my wife Kim had said, "Look, you've always wanted to do radio. There's a classified ad saying that this radio station is looking for someone. You need to apply." And now had no experience. I didn't go to journalism school. I had no journalism experience. I did take theater and I did some live theater, a few plays, but I applied for that job and I didn't get it. The news director was this old hard ass guy smoking a pipe. You got no experience, kid. He was just, he was the stereotypical news editor, like you would see in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay, well, can I just hang out and come by and learn from you?" And that was in February of, was that 1998, 99? Anyway, and I started hanging out there, but I knew then, and now I didn't know anything about Neville at that point or what I was doing. I had kind of forgotten about the Joseph Murphy stuff that I had practiced in college, but I just knew I was going to be on radio at that point, even though he told me no. I went to my bosses at Progressive Insurance. I was a claims adjuster at that point. And I said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm giving you 2 months notice." I didn't give him 2 weeks notice.
2 months.
Just to give me a little cushion. I gave him 2 months notice. "Where are you going?" "Well, I got a job at it's a big radio station here in town, but I can't tell you which one it is yet," because I didn't know. I just knew it was going to happen. Well, my last day at Progressive came and I didn't have the job, but within a week of that, the program director of the station called me and said, "Hey, we have an opening for a field reporter," which is not what I wanted. I wanted to be on the microphone, but I took it. And, my news director was just flabbergasted that they hired me. I didn't have any experience, but I knew I was going to be on the microphone. I would imagine, I did not think, like I said, anything that Neville was talking about, but I would imagine myself on the microphone in the studio saying my name on the microphone. And field reporter at the beginning of May. By the end of May, I was an afternoon anchor. And that really drove my news director crazy. And by the end of that year, I took his job. I had his job.
Oh, wow.
And then a year later, I was the news director over a group of 5 radio stations at the competitor on the lake in our city. So that's the experience I had. Just getting thrown into the fire, being on the mic, and no training, but I just love doing it. I've always been more comfortable on the microphone than talking to people in person. Used to be like that. Now I just love talking to people, whether it's on the microphone or on camera. But for the videos that you see me, I give all the credit to my wife, Kim. She's the one that's been telling me, you just need to just do some videos too, And I thought, because of my radio training, I like to keep it, do the radio thing, keep it to the audio, the theater of the mind kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then one day I was like, screw it. I got shit to say. So I just picked up my phone and recorded it. And then I got a really good response from people. It exploded, and it's crazy. Just from 1 or 2 videos that I've gotten so much response from that. And even the listens have gone up on my podcast since the videos have come out. As
Neville says, signs follow, right? They don't precede.
Mm-hmm.
So all that is like the confirmation.
Right. Right. And I love it. I love the videos are easy because when I think of something, I can just get on and talk about it instead of waiting for my podcast. Usually I have an idea and I write the note down. Let me remember this from the next podcast. But now I can just, get on the gram or on YouTube and post a little video.
Fantastic.
Well, we're very blessed that you're on the microphone, Mike. We love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. You guys have a great show too. Great podcast, great show. It's a great idea, by the way. I'm assuming the 2 commas mean because there's 3 of you, so you have 2 commas when you list. If you were to list the names of the people in it, is that where 2 commas?
No,
come from?
but that's kind of funny.
That's one of them.
Isn't it?
There's many reasons.
Interesting.
But think of a number with 2 commas in it.
So
I like that.
There's a millionaire club called the 2 Comma Club, and 20 hosted his coffee club, didn't he, on YouTube, and he used to play the thing. And we were talking one day on a Facebook post, and I said, "Hey, does anyone just fancy doing a show, and what should we call it?" And it was the things that we were talking about, and it was like, well, let's just call it 2 Comma Coffee Club, where people can just get together and we can just chat. Neville,
that is so cool. I love hearing the origins of things like that. Oh, you know what? I got to give one more thing about 2020 that really cracked the shell for me on one of those live calls. The live calls that was the pivot point for me in where I was in all of this to where I am now. We were on a call, and on those calls, you never know. You're going to have people talk over each other. So I started talking at the same time somebody else did. And I said, "Oh, sorry." And 20 snapped. It was like getting hit in the nose with a newspaper, as if I were a little puppy. He said, "Mike, quit apologizing. Stop saying you're sorry." And it just kind of like a jolt. But that stuck with me for a while, and I kept thinking about it. It's like, yeah, my whole life I've been in this, when I thought I was even being aggressive, I'm still in a passive mode where I'm allowing people, go ahead, you go first, not wanting to offend. I was raised to not offend anybody. My mom always told us, don't you act like country come to town.
And you were taught like that's manners.
Right.
Passive and submissive is not manners. It's putting yourself below somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't. It took, in that moment, years of that shit just shed off of me.
I'm about to write that down.
Yeah, I just loved it. It was a pivotal moment for me, and I want to give 2020 a big old hug when I see him in person one day.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he just keeps going and being more amazing.
Oh yeah, I
see him on the show.
I just love it because he's 2020. You know, he's not going to change with the wind. He's always going to be who he is, and his message is going to be the same because he knows it works. And so he's going to teach people what he knows works. And you don't have to worry about him changing with the fads on some new thing. That's right. I've got this going on now. No. He tells it like it is. And in him telling it like it is, being not being passive with me, the snap on the nose, stop saying you're sorry. Whoa.
Yeah. He really does. And David too. David walks his talk. That's they both do very strongly. Yeah. And that is the mark, that's when you see that, is that all congruent, and that it's a consistent, is what they're saying and what they're doing lining up. And then, you got somebody to pay attention. Yeah. Yeah. Breslow's great. I love that guy. He's another one. We've talked about meeting each other in person one day, and I know we will. I'm sure you will. Yeah. I've got him a really cool gift. Oh no, I did tell him. It's not a surprise. He loves the Beatles. We both love the Beatles, and John Lennon, and Paul McCartney has a memoir, a 2-volume memoir coming out. Huge set of books coming out in November, and I pre-ordered it for Breslow. And I was going to just wait and not tell him till November. And I was like, screw that. I can't hold this in till November 2nd. So I had to message him, and I sent him a picture of it. It's like, I got this for you. But he just, you gotta wait. And he sent me a cake he surprised me with a big old chocolate cake one day. We just love giving things to each other. He's just so lovely. He's a great guy. He is. Yeah. He is. Great fun to know and reading his amazing posts. He sort of wakes up and writes them down. Great. So we definitely would love our audience also to, we did our episode, check out his work, and his book. And he'll be with us on the Neville Summit. Oh, that's right. That's going to be fun. Yeah, that's going to be exciting. That's coming up early June. So absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited for you guys. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited too. Thank you. And I know, I think it's going to keep going, and it's some other form or continue on from the initial one over time. So it's going to be evolving. Oh yeah, it's not.
it's not going to do anything but help get the message out and
That's right.
grow your show, your podcast. It's a great idea. Laurel came up with a great idea, and it's exciting to see all these faces. I saw the promo graphic the other day. I was like, oh, I didn't know Lene and Michelle. I didn't know you personally yet, but I knew I was going to know you soon when I saw it. It's neat to see all these faces, Tony's face and David, these faces that I know, and 2020 smiling face on there.
Oh, it's so lovely that we're all coming together. Just before we finish, Mike, just to confirm, so people can follow you on YouTube, and is that also called Feeling Twisty?
It is everywhere. It's just Feeling Twisty on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and coming soon, feelingtwisty.com. But I'll let everybody know on my
brilliant
channel about that.
Beautiful.
Okay. Well, that's all we have time for today. But thank you so much for your time, Mike. I've really learned some things.
This was fun. I just want to keep going. Have me back anytime you want. I love doing this.
Love it.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
All right. See you soon. And
Bye.
see us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Anchor. So we're all over the place.
At 2 Coffee Club. See you next week.
Bye.
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 Bye.